1 million vehicles. Not prototypes, not government experiments, not something a guy built in his garage on the internet. 1 million cars, trucks, buses, tractors, motorcycles, and trains running on wood every single day across an entire continent. And the moment cheap gasoline came back, the technology disappeared. Not because it stopped working, not because it was dangerous, because the economics of the oil industry required it to disappear, and nobody had a marketing budget for wood chips. And what I'm about to show you was mass-produced in 1931. Sweden ran 73,000 vehicles on it. Germany ran 500,000. Australia ran 72,000. The United Nations published a full technical manual on it in 1986. You have never been told any of this, and you can build the core concept at home right now for the cost of a bag of hardwood chunks and some pipe fittings. Here's the full history, the science, the suppression, and the modern build. The device is called a wood gas generator, also called a gasifier, a producer gas unit, or if you want the original term, an invert generator. Here's the principle in one sentence. You burn wood in a controlled, oxygen-restricted environment, and instead of ash and smoke, you get a combustible gas that runs any internal combustion engine, car, truck, generator, tractor, with minimal modification. The gas produced is primarily carbon monoxide and hydrogen. Not the same thing as the carbon monoxide from a poorly vented heater. This is deliberately generated, filtered, cooled, and fed directly into an intake manifold. Engines barely need adaptation. Most World War II conversions were done in garages, by mechanics with basic tools. The modern DIY build breaks into 4 components. The reactor, the sealed metal chamber where wood chips are loaded and partially combusted, stainless steel pipe, end caps, and a controlled air inlet. Most builders source stainless tubing from HVAC. Suppliers or restaurant equipment suppliers. Budget $200 to $300 for a basic reactor. The cooling section. The gas exits the reactor at high temperature and needs to cool before entering the engine. A coil of stainless or copper pipe, run through a water bucket or soil, drops the temperature adequately. You likely have the materials for this already. The filter. The gas carries fine particles and tar that will damage an engine if unfiltered. A cyclone filter, essentially a metal cone that spins the gas and drops out particles, followed by a packed wood chip or foam filter bed, handles this. Total materials, $30 to $50. The carb adapter, a simple T-fitting on the air intake of the engine that allows producer gas to mix with the incoming air. Most engines accept this without any internal modification. Full build guides and a whole community exist at driveonwood.com, a community of engineers who have been running modern vehicles on wood gas for decades. The FAO's 1986 technical document, Wood Gas as Engine Fuel, is freely available from the United Nations and covers the full Swedish engineering research from the 1950s. That document was written so a rural mechanic in a developing nation could build and operate one. It is not complicated. Total build cost for a basic generator unit, $200 to $400. Fuel cost per 100 kilometers, the price of a bag of hardwood at the hardware store. I want to tell you about the moment I stopped being able to unsee this. We had a brutal windstorm last spring, the kind that takes trees down across the road and kills power for 3 or 4 days across the county. I had been prepping our property seriously for 2 years at that point. Rain barrels, soil amendments, stored food. I thought I had thought it through. Then I watched my neighbor, a retired mechanic, been on that property 40 years, fire up his shop. Not a gas generator, not solar. He had a small stationary gasifier unit he'd built from scratch, feeding a converted small engine, running off the pile of split hardwood behind his garage that he uses for heating anyway. He had lights, he had a drill press. He charged my battery bank for me. I stood there in the rain watching this 68-year-old man run power off wood, and I realized I had been preparing in the wrong direction entirely. I had been buying solutions. He had built a system. The technology he was using peaked in 1944 and then got quietly walked back to the margins. Not because it didn't work, because it worked on things that were already free. I went home and ordered the FAO manual that night. It changed how I think about energy. The story starts in France, not in wartime, in a chemistry lab in the 1870s. The process of converting solid organic material into combustible gas, gasification, was first used commercially for street lighting and cooking fuel before natural gas infrastructure existed. City gas, coal gas, wood gas, variations of the same thermochemical process powered the early industrial world before petroleum became the dominant story. This is not obscure chemistry. It is the direct predecessor of the energy system that built modern Europe. Then in the 1920s, a French-German engineer named Georges Imbert became obsessed with making it mobile. Imbert's insight was specific. Previous gasifiers were enormous, stationary, industrial. He wanted something that could sit on a vehicle and feed an engine in real time. By the late 1920s, he had a working prototype. By 1931, the Imbert generator was in commercial production. By the late 1930s, approximately 9,000 wood gas vehicles were operating across Europe, almost exclusively by enthusiasts and early adopters, functional, proven, economically viable, and almost completely invisible to mainstream automotive culture because gasoline was cheap, available, and aggressively marketed. Then, September 1939 changed everything. Germany invades Poland. Within weeks, fuel rationing begins across continental Europe. Gasoline becomes a military resource. Civilians lose access. And the automotive industry, which had dismissed wood gasification as a curiosity, suddenly needs it to survive. The conversion happened at a speed that has never been discussed in mainstream history. By 1942, 73,000 wood gas vehicles were operating in Sweden, 65,000 in France, 43,000 in Finland, of which 30,000 were buses and trucks, 4,000 were tractors, 600 were boats. Germany alone had 500,000 by the end of the war. Australia, not even under fuel rationing in the same way, ran 72,000. Germany built a network of 3,000 roadside stations stocked with firewood. Not metaphorically, literally a national infrastructure. The same infrastructure model as a modern petrol station, running on split hardwood. Military vehicles ran on it, trains ran on it. A Swedish Volvo running on wood gas in 1943 was not an experiment. It was a commuter vehicle. Ordinary people, ordinary mechanics, basic tools. The technology had scaled from one man's workshop to 1 million vehicles in under a decade. Then the war ended and the Suppression arrived. Here is what did not happen. A conference where oil executives plotted to bury wood gasification. No conspiracy, no secret documents, no villain. Here's what did happen, which is somehow more unsettling. Gasoline came back. In 1945, the oil supply normalized. American and Middle Eastern petroleum flooded back into European markets, cheaply and immediately. The calculus changed overnight. Wood gas required you to load fuel manually. It required a warm-up period before the engine could run. It reduced engine power by roughly 25%. It required periodic maintenance of the filter system. And it ran on wood. Gasoline required none of that. You stopped at a station, filled the tank in 3 minutes, and drove. That convenience, backed by an oil industry with enormous post-war infrastructure investment and political relationships across every Western government, made the choice feel obvious. Not because wood gasification had failed, it had performed exactly as designed across 1 million vehicles for 6 years, but because the competing product was being delivered cheaper and easier than anyone had managed before. By 1950, West Germany had fewer than 20,000 wood gas vehicles left. By 1955, the number was negligible. The Imbert generator, mass-produced, commercially successful, technically proven, was relegated to hobbyist literature and agricultural engineering journals. In 1957, the Swedish government, which has no oil reserves and knows it, quietly commissioned a research program to prepare for a fast transition back to wood gas in case of another supply disruption. Volvo participated. Engineers drove test vehicles over 100,000 kilometers. The research was thorough, methodical, and completely unpublicized outside technical circles. In 1986, the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization published the complete findings as a technical manual. Wood gas as engine fuel, formatted explicitly for use by rural mechanics in developing countries. Free, publicly available, written to be actionable by someone without an engineering degree. Almost nobody read it. The technology wasn't suppressed by force. It was suppressed by convenience, which may be the most effective suppression mechanism that exists. When the solution to your problem is slightly more complicated than the alternative, and the alternative is sold to you at every intersection and advertised on every surface, the complicated solution disappears from cultural memory within a single generation. And then everyone alive has always bought gasoline. And no one remembers that 1 million people once fueled their vehicles with wood from their backyard. Here is exactly what happens inside a gasifier, because understanding this is what makes the technology feel possible rather than magical. Wood is approximately 50% carbon by dry weight. When you apply heat in a controlled, oxygen-restricted environment, you trigger a sequence of thermochemical reactions. First, drying. Moisture in the wood is driven off as steam at around 200 degrees Celsius. Second, pyrolysis. Between 200 degrees Celsius and 500 degrees Celsius, the wood decomposes chemically, breaking down into charcoal, tars, and volatile gases. This is the same process as making charcoal, just as a stage in a larger process rather than the endpoint. Third, combustion. A controlled amount of air enters the reactor and partially combusts the pyrolysis products, raising the temperature to approximately 1,400 degrees Celsius. This is not burning the wood to ash. It is burning just enough to sustain the next reaction. Fourth, reduction. The hot combustion gases, carbon dioxide and steam, pass through the charcoal bed. At 1,400 degrees Celsius, carbon dioxide reacts with carbon to produce carbon monoxide. Steam reacts with carbon to produce carbon monoxide and hydrogen. The output gas, called producer gas or syngas, is a mixture of roughly 20% carbon monoxide, 15% hydrogen, and the remainder nitrogen and trace carbon dioxide. This gas is combustible, directly. Fed into an intake manifold, it burns in any standard internal combustion engine. The energy density is lower than gasoline, which is why power output drops roughly 20 to 25% compared to a petrol engine. That is the real limitation, not the technology, not the chemistry, just energy density. A wood gas vehicle is not a race car, but it is a vehicle running on split hardwood, running indefinitely, on fuel you can grow, collect, or buy at any hardware store for the price of a bag of charcoal. The FBO's 1986 testing confirmed the following on modern vehicle conversions: reliable starting after a warm-up period of 5 to 10 minutes, highway cruising at 100 to 110 kilometers per hour, and a range comparable to an electric vehicle, extendable significantly by carrying additional fuel in the cargo space. The invert generator, designed in the 1920s, and the FAO tested unit from the 1950s operate on identical principles. The chemistry has not changed. The physics has not changed. The only thing that changed is who profits from your fuel. You do not need to convert your car to use this right now. Here is the immediate version: a stationary wood gas generator feeding a converted small engine. The kind used in a generator or a water pump is simpler, cheaper, and more practical than a vehicle build. You're not dealing with mobility, vibration, or road dust. You place the unit, connect it to an engine, and run it from a woodpile. The Philippine government deployed exactly this system across rural, island communities in the 1980s. Small gasifier units running generators on agricultural waste. The FAO documented it in full. The capital cost paid itself back against diesel fuel in under 18 months. For a North American homestead context, a small gasifier connected to a 5 to 7 kilowatt generator running on hardwood scraps, mill offcuts, or pruned wood from your own property generates electricity at a cost that approaches zero once the unit is built. No fuel delivery, no storage of volatile liquids, no ethanol degradation, no generator sitting dead in the garage because you forgot to stabilize the tank. The grid goes down. You walk to the woodpile. You load the gasifier. You run the generator. You run the house. That is not a theory. It is a system that ran 1 million vehicles across a continent for 6 years and has been sitting in a United Nations document free for 40 years since. That's it for me today. I hope you learned a lot, and I'll see you in the next one.